Okay, let's start with Ragad. What do you have, ya Ragad?
I have a report about TV and culture.
Very good. What do you have, ya Sundus?
دكتور نفس زميلتي رغد.
TV and okay, good. Hala, what do you have?
Shop floor culture.
Very good. Shop floor culture. Okay. What do you have, ya Haneen?
TV and culture, doctor.
TV and culture. Okay, so we have 3 people on TV and culture and 1 on shop floor and culture. Okay, we still have 3 more reports to cover. I put 3 more for you, but anyway, we can take you today, and I want different people to bring on the other topics for next meeting, okay? We want to have more people participating in these reports so you can get the 5 points on the report activity. Okay, let's start with Ragad. Yalla ya Ragad, read.
Just, Doctor, can you give me 5 minutes?
Okay, let's move to Sundus. Yalla ya Sundus, read.
Yes, the relationship between TV and culture. Since its inception as an integral part of American life in the 1950s, television has both reflected and nurtured cultural mores and values. From the escapist drama of the 1960s, which consciously avoided controversial issues and glossed over life's harsher realities in favor of an idealized portrayal
Portrayal. Okay.
to the Copies reality TV show in recent years, on which participants discuss even in the most personal and
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sundus. Who wants to? Hala, are you ready to read yours?
Yes.
Yalla, go ahead.
Shop floor and culture. The idea culture of production in operational metrology. Each workplace, which means that each workplace operates within a culture context in which local features of interaction influence how employees conceptualize their workplace self. And it means that the culture of low skills workers, which has similarities to the counter school culture. And this term is contrast to office, which is a space that provides accommodation to the business management. And the culture is revealed in their joking relation as well as in other office tradition. The author argued that understanding this idea of culture as action arenas helps to specify how group knowledge, practice, and beliefs are expressed and affect occupational identity. That's all.
Okay, finished. Thank you. We talked about that last time. We said that the workplace has its own discourse, has its own culture, and from workplace to another also we have some differences. We gave an example on when we have workers from the middle class in one room, each sitting at his office or her office, or running a certain machine, how the discourse is going to be. And on the other hand, when we have, for instance, a group of engineers who are working, for Amazon, for instance, or for any of the high-profile companies, and they are making a lot of money, the type of discourse that would be taking place amongst those engineers would be much different from the type of discourse taking place among the middle class people who are not making money as much as those in Silicon Valley, for instance. Okay, now we get to Rahaf. What do you have, ya Rahaf?
Doctor, TV and culture.
Yalla, at TV and culture.
Television had a significant influence on the culture of many societies. To what extent would you say that television has positively or negatively affected the cultural development of your society? Television is one of the greatest inventions in the modern era. This has certainly changed the personal and social lives of people, be it people channels such Nat Geo, Discovery, etc., which help the young viewers to grow intellectually. There are almost every kind of channels for every kind of person, be it music, sports, science, economics, etc. This way, television has benefited in the cultural development of our society. On the flip side, television has many negative effects on the society's culture as well. For instance, there are many programs that influence young minds in a negative way, be like adult shows which depict unnecessary explicit natured visuals which might actually change the person's mindset. For example, too many crime shows are being telecasted these days. This has had negative impact on the society. Many young people have a delusional mindset thought of killing someone is cool. These days, it has actually become a fashion, not just that people seem to have losing their interest in human contact. That is meeting up people for casual together is decreased variably since the advent of television. This phenomenon is largely seen in youth who prefer spending most of their time watching TV shows and playing video games rather than any recreational activities like playing games. In conclusion, I would like to say that television has its fair share of positive and negative effects on the cultural development of the society. I would suggest it's better that people learn to balance their lifestyle and learn to maintain relationships with their fellow beings in order to improve the culture of the society. Television has to be part of their life, but they're only part of life.
Okay, a good one. Okay, very good, Yara. Hanin, also
Yes,
TV and culture.
دكتور أنا كنت جايبة عن تي في وكاتبة كمان عن السوب أوبرا and
Soap opera,
politics.
yes. Okay, let's now hear you talking about soap opera. What is soap opera? Yalla.
A soap opera is a radio or television serial dealing especially with domestic situations and frequently characterized by melodrama, in simple casts, and sentimentality. The term soap opera originated from radio dramas, originally being sponsored by soap manufacturers. BBC Radio's The Archers, first broadcast in 1950, is the world's longest-running radio soap opera. The longest running of existing television soap operas is Coronation Street, which was first broadcast on ITV in 1960. Although the record for the world's longest-running soap opera of all time is still Guiding Light, which began on radio in 1937, transitioned to television in 1952, and ended in 2009. A crucial element that defines the soap opera is the open-ended serial nature of the narrative, with stories spanning several episodes. One of the defining features that makes a television program a soap opera, according to Albert Moran, is that form of television that works with a continuous open narrative. Each episode ends with a promise that the storyline is to be continued in the other episode. In 2012, Los Angeles Times columnist Robert Lloyd wrote of daily
yes.
dramas.
Okay.
Although melodramatically eventful, soap operas such as this also have a luxury of space that makes them seem more naturalistic. Indeed, the economics of the form demand long scenes and conversations that at 22 episodes per season weekly series might dispense within a half dozen lines of the dialogue may be drawn out. As here 4 pages, you spend more time even with the minor characters. The apparent villains grow less, apparently villainous. Soap opera storylines run concurrently in strict and lead into further developments. And individual episode of soap opera will generally switch between several concurrent narrative threads that may at times interconnect and affect one another, or may run entirely independent to each other. Episodes may feature some of the show's current storylines, but not always all of them, especially in daytime serials and those that are broadcast each weekday. There is some rotation of both storyline and actors, so any given storyline or actor will appear in some, but usually not all of a week's worth of episodes. Soap operas rarely bring all the current storylines to a conclusion at the same time. When one storyline ends, there are several other stories threads at different stage of development. Soap opera episodes typically end on some sort of cliffhanger, and the season final, if a soap incorporates a break between seasons, ends in the same way, only to be resolved when the show returns for the start of a new yearly broadcasts. Evening soap operas and those that air at a rate of one episode per week are more likely to feature the entire cast in each episode and to represent all current storylines in each episode. Evening soap operas are and serial that runs for only part of the year tend to bring these things to a dramatic end of season cliffhanger. In 1976, Time magazine described American daytime television as TV's richest market, nothing to loyalty of the soap opera fan base and the expansion of several half-hour series into hour-long broadcasts in order to maximize ad revenues. The article explained that at the time, many primetime series lost money, while daytime serials earned profits several times more than their production costs. That's it, Doctor.
Okay, thank you. A very good one. Now, as you heard, soap opera, is equivalent to what we call in our culture musalsalat. Now, people were used to go to the movies and watch a movie, but here we have a new type of shows that you watch one episode and sometimes you wait for the next week to watch the second episode. These series were sponsored, paid for by the factories of soap. That's why they call them soap operas. That's why. And as you heard, the style of this show or of this production is that at the end of every episode they leave the audience with something very exciting is about to happen. So they wait for a whole week to see on the next episode what's going to happen and so on. Of course, when we were kids in the 70s and in the 80s, each series consisted of 13 episodes, and then they developed that to 30 episodes, and later on, especially in the USA, we have series that continue for 500 or 600 or 800 episodes in which the the characters grow up, get married, and have children. You can watch them over 4 or 5 years, the same series, and nobody can deny the influence of these soap operas on the culture. And it was a family activity to sit the parents with the children watching one of these series, and even sometimes neighbors would be gathering in one place to watch one of these soap operas. Okay, Ragad, are you ready
Yes,
now?
thank you. Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Television has reshaped many cultures around the world, especially America. Television influences many individuals by race, gender, and class. It reshaped many cultures by stereotypes. At first, the majority of the people who appeared on American
As between disciplines, it's sociologists or social historians or political economists or those concerned with the political organization of culture who have most commonly taken this viewpoint.
Okay, who wants to read? يلا يا لونا.
Yes, doctor. A more systematic approach to cultural production has been a relatively recent feature of the sociology of literature.
Okay,
Art of-
underline this one. A more systematic approach to cultural production has been a relatively recent feature of sociology of literature, art or popular cultural form. Now, underline this because this is something that is important to us. Yalla, go on.
These concern parallel debates about the mass media and were originally deeply influenced by the early experiences of state propaganda under the conditions of the modern media, especially in Nazi Germany. Crossing the more aesthetic and political debates has been the pervasive concern with the influence of capitalist conditions of production and the mass market in cultural commodities on the ethnicity of culture, including
Particularly the TV and its influence on our lives, on our attitudes sometimes, and as I said earlier, sometimes changing our ideologies. Okay, Salsabil, do you want to read the Salsabil?
Yes, doctor.
يلا يا سلسبيل اقرأي.
What units these diverse works, however, is that they all take, if not the viewpoint of cultural producers, at least the theoretical standpoint of a production. They are interested, first and foremost, in the production and the social organization of cultural forms. Of course, it is here that Marxist paradigms have occupied a very central place, even when continuously argued against early Marxist accounts asserted that the permanency of production conditions and often reduced these to some narrowly conceived version of the forces and the relation of a production.
Okay. Let's just talk about this one. Early Marxist accounts. Now, the early version of Marxism asserted the primacy of production conditions. We said that Marx talked about the struggle or the strife between social classes based on economy. Economy means production. He says that politics, religion, anything else could be a mask for the conflict. But the real conflict revolves around economy. It is money and power. Who has the money has the power, and then the other party is trying to share that money and that power with the first party. Okay, yes, go ahead.
Even such reductive analysis had a certain value. Culture was understood as a social product, not a matter of individual creativity only. It was
okay, underline this one, underline it. Culture was understood as a social product. It is a social product, collective product, not a matter of individual creativity only. Now, the creativity of the individuals in the society, it brings about the culture, or develops the culture, if we are talking about the development of culture. Yes.
It was therefore subject to political organization, whether by the capitalist state or by parties of social opposition. In a later Marxist accounts, the historical forms of the production and organization of culture, the substructures have begun to be elaborated.
Okay, thank you. Super stuff. Okay. ريد يا مروج اللي قرأت حنين ها مع انه قلنا لا مروج. طيب يلا.
دكتور لا دكتور
نعم.
هاي سلسبيل بس عشان المايك.
داخل بالاكونت تاعك يعني؟
لا دكتور
لا.
انا داخله من اكونت اختي.
بدي اقول لانه المايك تاعك يعني مسكر يعني اللي قرأت سلسبيل.
دكتور لانه المايك ما بيشتغل عندي فصرت احضر من تليفون تاني.
طيب تحت اسم ايش؟
حنين قعدان.
حنين. طيب خلينا احط بس اسمك. ماشي. يلا يا مروج اقرأي لنا.
In Gramsci's writing, the study of culture from the viewpoint of production becomes a more general interest with the cultural dimensions of struggles and strategies as a whole. The long-standing and painful influence of high culture or specialist definitions of culture within Marxism was also definitively challenged. Gramsci was perhaps the first major Marxist theorist and communist leader to take the cultures of the popular classes as a serious object of study and of political practice. All the more modern features of culture organization also start to appear in his work. Modern features of culture organization also start to appear in his work. He writes of culture organizers, producers, not just as little knots of intellectuals on the old revolutionary or Bolshevik model, but as whole social strata concentrated around particular institutions, schools, colleges, the law, the press, the state bureaucracies, and
Right.
the political parties.
Okay, now I added for you one topic on the list, the Bolshevik Revolution. This is, what I expect you to bring for us next time, a report on the Bolshevik Revolution. It is also called the October Revolution. كملي يا مروج يلا.
Gramsci's work is the most sophisticated and fertile development of a traditional Marxist approach via culture production. Yet I think that Gramsci remains such more the Leninist than is sometimes appreciated in New Left or academic debates in Britain. From the work available in English, it seems to be he was less interested in how culture forms work subjectively than in how to organize them externally.
Okay, thank you. Now the next section titled Limits of the Viewpoint of Production. Now we are not going to read this section because we don't have time, but we have to cover it today. So I want to give you a quick summary of this section. I would like you to follow with me and to underline the things that I'm going to ask you to underline. So we start a new section next time. Now we have two major points in this section. The two major points about two difficulties, okay? The two difficulties that we face when we look at culture as a productive process. We know that, Marx and, others, they talked about culture being part of the production process. So what are the difficulties, according to our author, that we face when we look at culture as what? As a productive process, He actually gives two difficulties, the first one in the first paragraph and the second one in the second paragraph. So I'm going to read the first one and then we will jump to the middle of this paragraph to underline, a couple of lines, and then we move to the second difficulty in the beginning of the second paragraph. So be prepared. I find too recurrent, that means that happens very frequently. that happen very frequently. I find two recurrent limits to looking at culture from this viewpoint. The first, this is the first, start to underline here. The first difficulty is the familiar one of economism. That means the problem of economy, the problem of economy. Though it is useful, I hope to restate the problem in a different way. There is a tendency to neglect what is specific to culture production in this model. Cultural production is assimilated to the model of capitalist, usually production in general. Underline this. That means cultural production is absorbed and integrated, okay, in the model of capitalism. Okay. Now we go to the second difficulty. The second difficulty. The beginning of the next paragraph. The second difficulty is not economism, but what we might call productivism. The two are often combined, but are analytically distinct. Gramsci's Marxism, for instance, is certainly not economistic, but it is arguably productivist. The problem here is the tendency to infer the character of a cultural product and its social use from the conditions of its production, as though in cultural matters production determines all. Underline this. The problem here, underline it, the problem here is the tendency. There is a tendency among people, among movements, to infer, to conclude the character of a cultural product and its social use from where? From conditions of its production. From conditions of its productions. As though in cultural matters, production determines all. You know, this is the relationship between production and culture. Culture being now not as a whole, but being, you know, the culture of this group or of that social class, and the culture of the other group or of the other social class. We all know that in the market we have products that are meant to be bought by special, you know, people or certain social groups, and other products that are meant to be consumed by other groups. Sometimes belong to the lower classes or the upper middle classes or even the upper classes only. Okay, now we turn the page, going to the next page. The beginning of the paragraph on page 92, I still find the debate between Walter Benjamin and Theodore Adorno about the tendency of mass culture as a very instructive example. Adorno swept on his majestic polemic, identifying capitalist production conditions, tracing effects in the fetishized form of cultural commodity, and finding its perfect complement in the regressive listening of fans of popular music. There is a highly deductive or inferential element in his reasoning, often resting on some giant theoretical strides, plotted first by, you know, Lucas, the completion, and so on. Okay, just underline, you know, this, you know, difference between Walter Benjamin and Theodore Adorno. Next time, inshallah, we'll start with this quotation, okay, that explains how a slogan is used in a political way, a slogan that is used, you know, for a certain product and now is used in a political way. Okay, let me call your names quickly.